It's all quiet in the underground bunker. Doors closed, locks bolted. But the Great One isn't just resting on his laurels. He's making sure your weekend is even better by giving you his best. This is the best of Mark Levin.
There are times in mankind's history that draw attention in future decades, future centuries. This will be one of them. There are wars, civil wars, other wars going on all over the world. But Biden and Blinken and the American media are focused on Israel and only Israel. You do not have nightly talks in the media. You do not have daily talks at the White House, press events about what Russia's doing with Ukraine and how Ukraine's responding, about what Xi's doing in Hong Kong and his plotting and planning for Taiwan. There are also murder, mayhem, rape going on in the Middle East with Iran, with Syria. And you do not have any reporting on all that. It's Israel. Israel. The Biden administration wanted Israel to enter into a ceasefire about a month ago. Effectively, it has. It's effectively ceased operations in Gaza, although they're going to pick it up now because they've been waiting. And while that's been taking place, Hezbollah, one of the other terrorist surrogates of Iran, have been firing scores of missiles into Israel and Israeli cities. You don't hear about that. Hamas has been murdering volunteer aid workers. You don't hear about that. IDF soldiers are dying while they wait for orders. You don't hear about that. This administration, his party, and the media in our country, I want you to keep something in mind. It's the most inhumane, propagandistic, radical government / media we've ever had in the United States of America. Ever. 80% of the American people support Israel. 72% of the American people support Israel finishing off Hamas. With the Democrat Party funding the Hitler Youth in our colleges and universities. The same Democrat Party donors that are funding the Biden campaign. George Soros has his invisible hand behind most of this. His son Alex has visited the White House more than 100 times. The Islamist groups like CARE, founded by Hamas, a front group for Hamas, have an open door to the White House. Jordan, King Jordan, who imprisons, tortures, kills his political opponents. His wife is invited on a Sunday show, and she's never challenged about what Jordan does. Ever. Syria is a hellhole. Egypt is a hellhole. Iraq is a hellhole. Doesn't matter. Biden meets with the Jordanian king. Then he calls Netanyahu and puts the pressure on him. Do not win this war. Do not kill off Hamas. While he's funding Hamas through Iran. If this is all okay with you, then vote Democrat. Because apparently tens of millions of Americans are going to do that. Tens of millions of your fellow Americans are going to vote for Biden. They're going to vote for the Democrat Party. We have two different countries in this country. Two different countries. With Americans who believe in America. We have Americans who love America. with Americans who understand the difference between good and evil. And then there's the others. With media in America, it is a Goebbels-like media. This upsets the White House when you mention it, see, because they only want to plant Hitler and Mussolini and so forth in the mouths of the media against Trump. But it is a very Goebbels-like media in America. Very simple. They stand for Biden. They stand with Hamas. They stand against liberty. They stand against the Constitution. They stand for one-party rule. I'll prove it to you. Make sure you go to camera.org, like the word camera.org. See what they do and see how they expose what the media do in this country. Go to memory.org, memri.org, and there are other sites. This website, Stand Against Anti-Semitism, they have been harassed repeatedly by a reporter for the New York Times. Listen to Norah O'Donnell in 60 Minutes yesterday. Listen to what she had to say to Hakeem Jeffries. Listen very carefully. Cut 26, go.
Israel was put in a very difficult situation when it comes to the horrific events of 10/7, a brutal terrorist attack by Hamas, which is an entity that has sworn to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. So Israel was in a position where, of course, it had to respond to decisively defeat Hamas. At the same time, my view has been that we have to do everything possible to get the hostages out and to surge humanitarian assistance in.
Now let's stop right there. One of the reasons they're having difficulty getting the hostages out is because the Biden administration and their comments, whether it's Blinken or Biden or Kirby or the rest of the reprobates, is giving aid and comfort to Hamas. Hamas knows that the United States will not have Israel's back if it destroys Hamas. It is undermining Israel's ability to get their hostages back and our hostages back. And Biden is very poor at getting hostages out of anywhere. He paid the Iranians $6 billion for American hostages. $6 billion. And there's still American hostages. Probably aren't even alive anymore in Afghanistan. But we have to surge humanitarian assistance into Gaza. This is a talking point. Humanitarian assistance has been surged into Gaza, and Hamas steals it. And they use it for themselves, and what they have left, they sell. They sell to their own people. But let's listen to what Norah O'Donnell says in response to him. Go.
But isn't it also true that while retaliating and going after Hamas terrorists, that Israel has been indiscriminate in its bombing?
All right, stop right there. That's why I'm playing this clip. Isn't it also true, while retaliating and going after Hamas terrorists, that Israel has been indiscriminate in its bombing? Now, she is the she's the main anchor for CBS News. She's it. She's the big dog. You can be an observer. Just read basic information and you know that's not true. But she says it anyway. Why does she say that? Hakeem Jeffries even corrects her. Go ahead.
Say that they've been indiscriminate. I do think what we'd like to see moving forward is the execution of the new phases of this conflict with surgical precision.
You can still be a strong supporter of it.
That's enough. 60 Minutes, the American media, these Sunday shows, these evening shows, these endless morning shows and day shows. These aren't news people, ladies and gentlemen. They're not interested in news. They're not interested in conveying facts or information or knowledge to the American people. They're on a mission to destroy the state of Israel. We have to come to grips with this. They're on a mission to overthrow our constitutional republic. We have to come to grips with this. And they're doing it on a daily basis, and it is constant, 24/7. Before October 7th, we, the American people in our country, were under constant attack by the same media. That we are racist, that we are bigoted, that we are this, that we are that, that our parents are no good, that we don't have a right to free speech, that we don't have a right to freedom of assembly. The pandemic, which is the run-up to what they intend, how they treated you and me and all American citizens, how they corralled us and bullied us and controlled us. CRT, ESG, DEI, all built on Marxist racism. The 1619 Project pushed out by the media, especially the New York Times, into our classrooms. It was a war on you and me, all of us, regardless of faith and color. A war on our founders, 2020, the riots. A war on our Declaration, a war on our constitutional system. Every day, day in and day out. The very fabric of this nation being torn over and over and over again. And today, the focus is on the state of Israel. Why? Because they're just like us. That's why. They believe in liberty, representative government. They're our closest ally. But this time, rather than the majority in the country, and by that I don't mean white in the United States, I mean the majority who love America. And we come on all shades and stripes and backgrounds. Now it's Israel's turn. Except this time, it's the Jews, specifically the Jews. As the smallest minority in the Middle East, the smallest minority probably in the world, certainly one of them. Because now you have the fusion, as I keep saying, of the Marxists and the Islamists. American Marxism explains everything. But now we throw in the Islamists. And so the Jake Tappers and the Wolf Blitzers, the Scarboroughs, the Rachel Maddows, the whole conga line, the miscreants, malcontents, and reprobates. The focus isn't immediately on you now. Now the whole gang moves their focus on this tiny little country with a tiny little population that had its people brutalized in monstrous, unimaginable ways. And they have to fight their way through 50,000 terrorist militia. They have to fight their way through dense cities, urban areas, tunnels, to get to the culprits, to get to the Hitlers and the Himmlers and the rest of them who did this. And they've done so in a way that Admiral John Kirby has never done so. They've done so in a way that General Austin has never done so. They've done so in a way that the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States never dreamed of. And yet they're under attack. Why? Because Joe Biden is not only an anti-Semite, he's decided that the quickest way, the easiest way to win re-election is to throw in with the Bernie Sanders types. But Joe's always been an anti-Semite, as I explained on TV this weekend, and to you. And he's always hated his own country. Always. Always.
Mark
Levin.
Making your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Welcome, America. I've been thinking of a number of these issues today, the best way to address them. And I want to begin with this Manhattan trial. And then I want to begin, after that, with Joe Biden at the Holocaust Museum and Memorial. But first, this Manhattan case. And by the way, as a side note, I notice what I post on social media is regurgitated on TV, so I'm loath sometimes to post it because social media is very limiting on how you can present information. So I can present it, but it requires, in my view, a more substantive presentation. In the Manhattan case, you're seeing the naked use of the criminal justice system and judicial system to smear, threaten, humiliate, and destroy a political opponent of the Democrat Party. Indeed, perhaps the most powerful political opponent the Democrat Party has ever confronted. Therefore, tactics of the old Soviet Union and the French Revolution must be used to one degree or another. For the actual American justice system won't deliver to the Democrats what they demand. The elimination of Trump as a candidate or the crippling of him to such an extent that he cannot win. The Democrat Party must be protected and empowered at all costs, just like the Communist Party throughout the last 150 years and numerous fascistic parties. This is a show trial. It's not a trial based on Western values and principles, including those adopted by our founding fathers. It's a trial whose outcome is preordained, or at least that's the objective. It'll take a strong juror to reject what the Democrat Party demands of him. There's always hope. But that grave damage has been done to a once treasured American system of justice. This is the third trial conducted by the New York Democrat Party for the benefit of the state and federal parties. Joe Biden, congressional Democrats, etc. It is conducted for propaganda purposes, for political purposes, and to make clear that anyone who dares to challenge the party in a fundamental and serious way will be punished, ruined, if not destroyed, simply by having to go through such a tyrannical process. You will pay an unimaginable price, as will your family. Your businesses will be destroyed and seized from you. Everything you've built over more than half a century will be subjected to the party's wrecking ball. And the fact that there is a presidential election is precisely why this case and the others must be heard now, must be conducted by Democrat prosecutors and by Democrat judges under the pretext of enforcing and upholding the law, laws that have absolutely nothing to do with the alleged offenses. President Trump has been indicted for crimes that do not exist and have not been committed. He's been subjected to SWAT teams, and his personal phone records have been seized by the government. He was denied attorney-client privilege, normal appellate processes, and protections historically afforded former presidents. And the list goes on. And of course, Democrat Party officials, operatives, and media are giddy. They urge his imprisonment for supposedly violating outrageously unconstitutional gag orders that prevent President Trump from defending himself against these injustices and abuses, while everyone else, including prosecution witnesses, are free to say whatever they want. And the judge is so thoroughly conflicted, his refusal to recuse himself underscores how corrupt he and his courtroom are. The judge allows virtually all information into the trial, especially testimony that has absolutely nothing to do with the case at all, and a case that has nothing to do with anything either. The most important way to fix this is on November 5th. It won't be a permanent fix, but it can be a first step. A Trump win will demonstrate that even these totalitarian tactics will not stop the American people from doing what is right. I've done a lot of reading, a lot of research on what it was like to be put on trial in various totalitarian regimes. It's just like this. To destroy a person's reputation. To bring in whatever information you can, whatever witnesses you can. To degrade the individual. To smear the individual. To libel the individual. There are no rules in this courtroom. The judge rules with an iron fist. But the normal rules that take place in a courtroom, rules of evidence, rules of witness notice, rules of what crime you're actually trying to defend your client against, those rules don't apply. We've actually never witnessed anything like this before, ladies and gentlemen. Never. The criminal justice system, the judicial system in America has been destroyed. You should have no faith in it anymore. And the judges have themselves to blame, as do the prosecutors all over the country. I don't even hear Republican district attorneys or attorneys general speaking out, condemning what's taking place. They hide in their own jurisdictions, behind their big desks. They don't want anything to do with it. Nothing. I see Republicans like Paul Ryan, Chris Christie, say the most damnable things. Apparently they can't rise to the moment to defend their country. They're still caught up in their personal animus. I see Nikki Haley. A few months ago, she wouldn't shut the hell up. Now she won't speak up. Just watching as this takes place. Because her moral center isn't a moral center at all. She wants to be president, and she'll walk over anybody and do anything to accomplish that. But she'll have to walk through us. This is the time right now that determines those who support this country and love it and those who don't. Will put aside their personal political animus or won't. Is more worried about what Biden's doing to our country than all the lies and the rest about Trump. We had Trump for 4 years. He didn't do this to the judicial system. He didn't defy Supreme Court rulings. He didn't defy federal law with open borders, student loans, Obamacare for DACA, and the list goes on and on. He did none of that. He was harassed and harangued, stalked from the moment he decided to run for office and won office. The administrative state rose up. The police state, the intelligence state, the massive bureaucracy, they rose up. They rule the roost. Who is this man? He must be destroyed. And they work with the Democrat Party. They work with the media, the leaks, the lies. The man didn't have a day of peace as President of the United States. Not one. Now they drag out this porn actor who had signed a non-disclosure agreement, who'd been paid at her demand. That's out the window. She wants more money. They put her on a stand over a bookkeeping issue that they're trying to turn into a federal election felony. I was the first to say, I notice I do that a lot, as the others burp it up today. This is a dead case walking. The problem is the appeal won't be heard until well after the general election. And so this isn't about the law. This isn't about a bookkeeping error. This isn't about a federal campaign action in which this judge and this prosecutor have absolutely no jurisdiction of any kind. You also heard a legal analyst say today that the effort is underscored, Biden's role, by the fact that the Department of Justice hasn't gone into any court to object to the violation of the federal jurisdiction by the localities. I think I've been saying that for 2 months, here and on TV and beyond. It's okay. They're catching on. That's good. I talked about collateral evidence. And the decision by the highest court in New York to throw out Weinstein's conviction because of all the collateral evidence coming in. Now that's common fare by the legal analysts, and that's good. And that's taking place. And the judge doesn't care because the judge's mission is not to be a judge. The judge's mission is as an operative for the Democrat Party and the Biden re-election campaign. Just like a judge in the Soviet Union. Judge isn't there to follow any semblance of due process or justice. The judge is there to get the job done. The conviction. Maybe we'll have a courageous juror or two. That would be great. That does not excuse what's taking place. Well, the justice system works. No, it doesn't. It's broken badly by the Democrats. It's not a justice system. Any more than you can call what happened during the French Revolution a justice system. Any more than you can call what Stalin did to his political opponents a justice system. You ever hear of Eugene Debs, Mr. Producer? You've heard me talk about him a little bit. He was a radical socialist. And he was given a hell of a time to Woodrow Wilson, who, of course, was a radical socialist and a racist. Democrats, both. And so he got Congress to pass, you may be familiar with this, ladies and gentlemen, 1917, the Espionage Act. A very broad act intended to silence opponents to Wilson and his entry into World War I. Eugene Debs was an opponent. He was an isolationist. Our entrance into World War I. He's also a presidential candidate in multiple election cycles. But Woodrow Wilson couldn't afford to lose a couple percentage of the vote. I mean, his first election, he won because the Republican Party was split between Theodore Roosevelt and Howard Taft, and he snuck through. And he didn't want any problems this time around. He was a minority president in terms of the vote numbers, and he wanted to be a majority president. And he wanted to ensure his reelection. So he sent out the federales, I guess, to arrest him. And he ran for president still. Did Debs, from prison, from federal prison. I think he got 2 or 3% of the vote. If you think the Democrat Party is beyond this, you're dead wrong. If you think the American media are beyond this, you're dead wrong. We live in a country where we have a monopoly party that pushes the agenda, the Democrat Party, whether or not they're elected. They own the culture, the colleges and the universities and the media. They own Hollywood, and they have no intention of going into the night quietly. And the greatest threat they face, or maybe have ever faced, is Donald J. Trump.
Mark Levin. You're listening to the best of Mark Levin.
You know, as I think about it, Mr. Producer, Stormy Daniels in that courtroom is perfect because it fits into the legal pornography that's taking place in that courtroom, don't you think? Oh, yeah. I think so. You know. Anyway, we move on. It's hard to move on because this stuff is so disgusting. It's happening to our country. It's so appalling. If you want to hear what Biden said at the Holocaust Museum, you can go online and listen. But I want you to hear what the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, had to say on the Holocaust Remembrance Ceremony today. Cut 4, go.
We did that together. And we did it because it was the right thing to do. We did it to help Israel protect its borders, to fend off threats from Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah and all the proxies. I was proud to pass that package after months of conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu, with the ambassadors and all the people there who are trying to defend their nation against the threats that are facing them. And now I think it's very important that we deliver that critical assistance without any delay at all.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, I need to repeat myself on something that I said yesterday, so I will repeat it today. In a constitutional republic, one member of the legislature, or in this case, our Congress, the House of Representatives, ought not have the power to force a vote on whether the leader of that body stays or goes. Under what form of constitutional republicanism, as a matter of fact, under what form of parliamentary democracy, under what form of any free or relatively free governmental system does one person who represents 700,000 or 800,000 constituents, maybe not all of them, but let's pretend they do, wield that kind of power? It's a rule that the Republicans, some of them, forced on Kevin McCarthy. It's a rule. It's not the Constitution. It's not a founding principle. It doesn't come from the Magna Carta. And it's anti-republicanism. It's anti-constitutionalism, and it's anti-democracy. I'm anti-pure democracy because mobocracy is as dangerous as fascism. But we'll put that aside for now. We have the best system of government. The problem is we don't have the best people who are running it. But I want to be clear. Those who support what what the hell's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing, and Gosar and Massey, they're not constitutionalists. They're not conservatives. They're not little d Democrats. Because they support this rule that allows one member, maybe three, to force a vote where there's a one-vote majority among the Republicans, to force a vote on whether the Speaker stays or goes. I am sick and tired of these drama queens. I am sick and tired of this performance art where these guys get nothing done. They talk about shutting down the government. What's their strategy? They talk about securing the border. What's their strategy? How? When? Where? They don't have the votes. Let's hear it. Lay it out. I'll read it on the air. Now, it's one thing to push for these things, and I agree with that. Push. Push hard. We've been doing that here on this program before any one of the members, any one of them, was ever elected to the House of Representatives or the Senate. We've led these battles. with Levin surges. Many of these people got elected with our help. The point is, when one member has the power to call for a vote of essentially no confidence, that's not representative government. She doesn't represent anybody but her own district, if that. So if you're a constitutionalist, if you're a real conservative, you should object to this rule. This rule gives power to people who, in many respects, support anarchy. They think anarchy is a program. They think anarchy will carry the day and get us what we want. Anarchy and chaos. I'll tell you what will get us. Minority status in the House of Representatives. They're not the true believers. They're not purer than we are. In fact, they're not true believers at all. They draw attention to themselves. They're good at that. They beat their chests about what everybody else should do. They're good at that. But they don't know how to lead. They're not statesmen. And you can believe whatever you want to believe. You can go to the floor and scream till your eyes pop out of your head and blood pops out of your ears. You can go on my beloved Fox or talk radio and say whatever you want to say. But the fact is, you're not doing anything. You're not moving the needle. You're not even building a movement. So, of course, I oppose the effort to depose the speaker. And as I asked when it came to Kevin McCarthy, and I'll ask again, and replace him with who exactly? Who? A relative minority among the Republicans don't get to choose the speaker. They're not going to be able to choose the speaker. And then I love this line. He's going to have Democrats vote for him in order to keep his job. Well, they needed Democrats to vote against Kevin McCarthy in order to get rid of him. And that didn't seem to bother many of the same people when they enlisted the Democrats to remove McCarthy. So I don't need to hear the BS, the incoherence. I remember when Reagan was running in the Republican primary. Mr. Conservative. He challenged the establishment. He fought the establishment. He almost won the nomination in 76. And he runs in 1980. And yet still some Republicans challenged him. They said he wasn't conservative enough. They said his record as governor wasn't good enough. They had supported a bill on a mother's health and abortion that even he admitted was wrong, and they go over the whole Reagan wasn't good enough. Nobody's ever good enough. Now, we know who the bad Republicans are. The Romneys, the Collinses, the Murkowskis. There's a long list in the House and the Senate. I got it. They're right. And where possible, we should try and defeat them. When I started endorsing candidates over 20 years ago on conservative talk radio, nobody, I repeat, nobody in syndicated conservative talk radio was doing it. Nobody. You just didn't do it. But I did it. And I did it a lot. Ask Marco Rubio, who won't come on the program. Ask Ted Cruz. Ask Mike Lee. Even ask Rand Paul. Ask them. We won some and we lost some. The Tea Party. The most important show, the most important book, Liberty and Tyranny. and the Tea Party were one and the same. I got it. I understand. When I was a young man, I mean young, we took on Bush. We called the state animal, the rhinos in Pennsylvania. We fought them. We fought them hard. We organized against them. Organized. In the trenches, in the streets. And we eventually defeated them. Reagan got the nomination. I don't see this here. Get the power because you get one vote under a preposterous rule. But don't worry, we'll take out this guy, Johnson, and then there'll be another one. And then we insist that rule stays so we can take the next one out, and the one after that, and the one after. Oh, that's great. I have a better idea. If you really feel this way, why don't some of these people get off their asses every weekend and campaign in districts that have these rhinos, but where a conservative can actually win? So if you're going to take a district that's 20 points Biden, and we have a Republican in that district, would it be stupid to take out the Republican, Mr. Producer? Now, there are occasions when you need to, don't get me wrong. If they're constantly undermining your party or undermining conservatism, I got it. But because you disagree with them on half a dozen votes, then I don't get it. I forget which one it was who said there's really no difference between Hakeem Jeffries and Mike Johnson. I thought, now how stupid is that, Mr. Producer? Who was that? Boebert? Boebert? Really? There's no difference between the two. I can give you 1,000 differences. But why do I have to explain it? You know, the American people, the differences. The Democrat Party's the enemy. The Democrat Party hates America. If they control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, it is over. It is over, over, over. And you can have as many rules as you want in the House of Representatives, many speeches on the floor as you want, many appearances on this show and Fox and the rest as you want, while the country's burning. If I saw actual plans and they could be explained on this program or any program, I'm all in. But there aren't any. There aren't any. Zero. Other than if the leadership would just listen to me. Oh, okay. But that's not leadership, to say if leadership would just listen to me. You've got to deal with numbers. You've got to be able to persuade people. That's the whole point of the speech and debate clause. You've got to go out in the trenches and take on individuals who you think are actually harming the mission. But don't play games with us with the Washington bullcrap and the bureaucracy. And, well, we got this rule. We're going to issue this. Oh, good for you. Fantastic. They're going to trigger the rule. There's going to be another vote. People who are not as engaged as we are going to look at this and say, these bastards, I'm so sick of it. Inflation's through the roof. And on and on and on. You know, there are people who have ideas that are the greatest ideas imaginable, but they never do anything with them. Have you met people like that, Rich? I have a great idea for this. If only people would listen to me. I have a great idea for that. If only people would adopt it. Aren't you sick of hearing people like that? Because those are people who are losers. Losers. They're not doers. They're not leaders. They're not statesmen. I'm not picking on any one individual. I'm talking generally. You can fill in the blank if you choose to. I don't agree with everything that Republicans do, Republican leadership does, conservatives do, any more than Scalia and Clarence Thomas always agreed. They didn't always agree, but they approached the problem the same way. Relatively so. And sometimes they came up with different results. Well, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it is. So supporting this effort is not supporting the Constitution. It's not supporting conservatism. It's not supporting MAGA. It's not supporting anything. It's not supporting Trump. Trump opposes this. He told, what's her name? MTG. He said, get over it. Move on. That's what he said. What I'm saying is, they'll do what they want to do, but don't wrap it in constitutionalism and conservatism and Americanism. That is BS. You got a rule change by holding a gun to Kevin McCarthy's head, where one bastard can stand up, whoever it is, whether it's Democrat or Republican, call for a vote on the speaker, and that is not representative government. And I can promise you that the father of the Constitution, Madison, would never have supported that. I could promise you, one of the greatest patriots of all time, George Mason, would not have supported that. None of them would have supported it, because they would have called it the tyranny of one. They didn't believe in that. Neither do I.
Mark Levin. The Great One makes your weekend even better. This is the best of Mark Levin.
Well, the House just voted. There was a motion to vacate, as we talked about, by Marjorie Taylor Greene. 11 Republicans, including her, voted for the motion. It was defeated. People will say they needed Democrats to save the speaker. Well, they needed Democrats to throw out the last speaker, Kevin McCarthy. Now, 11 of the Republicans who voted against it, I don't have the whole list. Representative Barry Moore, Representative Warren Davidson, Representative Thomas Massey, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Biggs, Representative Crane, Representative Gosar, that's 3 from Arizona, Representative Mooney from West Virginia, and Representative Chip Roy from Texas. 11 of them. That means the overwhelming majority of Freedom Caucus members, of conservatives, constitutionalists in the House said no. These 11 said yes. And I explained my opposition to this at some length 2 nights in a row now. You cannot have one member of the House throw the whole damn institution into turmoil. The framers would have rejected that 100%. What's being done here is based on rules that they imposed on Kevin McCarthy. They blackmailed him. He agreed to the rule. It is a bonehead rule. Boneheaded rule that one member can cause such chaos and anarchy. Chaos and anarchy are not what constitutional conservatism are about. That's what the left is about. That's what the left's about. So, I'm not aware of any form of representative government, of constitutional government, of conservative viewpoints, belief systems, that thinks one House member out of 535 should have this kind of power. So these 11, as far as I'm concerned, are not promoting conservatism. They're not promoting anything except anarchy. That's just the way it goes. And they will accomplish nothing, and they have accomplished nothing. But I want to move on. There was a hearing today, and more is coming to light. More and more is coming to light about how the Biden administration is supporting Iran, supporting Hamas, supporting the terrorists. about how the Biden administration has a two-pronged propaganda campaign going on. On the one hand, they talk about how they support Israel, but on the other hand, they trash Israel, and their actions demonstrate who they are. Bernie Sanders has demanded that Biden start cutting arms off from Israel, and that's exactly what he's doing. Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, was at a hearing today. And I want you to listen to this. A couple of clips. Cut one, go.
So we've been very clear, Senator, as you know, from the very beginning.
First of all, why do these people always say they're very clear when they're not? As we've said, we've been very clear. First of all, they were withholding ammunition and munitions from Israel for at least 2 weeks now. We didn't know that. They're withholding these precision weapons, exactly the kind of weapons you need. Exactly the kind of weapons you need if you're going to, be able to target the terrorists without killing civilians. They're withholding those. Which tells me that Israel's going in, they have to go in, regardless of what Biden and Blinken want. Biden and Blinken want Israel to commit suicide, just as they're pushing the United States to commit suicide. We're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. But go ahead. Let's start from the top. Cut one, go.
So we've been very clear, Senator, as you know, from the very beginning that Israel shouldn't launch a major attack into Rafah without accounting for and protecting the civilians that are in that battle space.
They have provided plan after plan after plan to the United States. Israel is a sovereign country. They're an ally. That's why we are supposed to be helping them and supporting them. It's an ally that's fighting our enemy, Iran, and the terrorists who are secreting themselves into our country, who attacked us on 9/11 and many, many other occasions. Israel's the point of the spear for us. This tiny little country. And so, we're not happy with the plan that they gave us and so forth and so on. They're funding Iran. They funded October 7th. Iran has been able to rebuild its military, as well as Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis that are shooting at our ships. And this clown is concerned about what Israel might do with weaponry. When if they had left Israel alone, this war would be over already. It'd be done. And the hostages, God willing, would be back. Those who have been murdered, it would be over. But this is what Biden does, decade after decade. Go ahead.
And again, as we have assessed the situation, we paused one shipment of high payload munitions. And now again,
keep something in mind. This is a shipment of high payload munitions, that Israel already paid for. This is even before the vote on new armaments. So Israel's been waiting there for the shipments that it already paid for, that Congress already authorized. And Biden didn't tell the United States Congress. And in fact, they didn't even tell Israel. They just stopped it. Go ahead.
I think we've also been very clear about the steps that we'd like to see Israel take to account for and take care of those civilians before major combat.
What do you mean to account for and take care of the civilians? There are more 18-wheelers going into Gaza, loaded with food and medicine and water and so forth than ever before. Ever before. 87% of those people who they're feeding and medicating voted for Hamas. The vast majority of what's being brought into the Gaza Strip is being stolen by Hamas, handed out to the Hamas terrorists, and what's left is being sold to the Gazans with a big tax placed on it. Everybody knows this. And yet they still keep going on with the Hamas casualty numbers and the fact that They're not doing enough to get aid into Gaza. These are lies. These are blood libels. It's helping to spread the anti-Semitism in every capital on the face of the earth through our colleges and universities. The propaganda that this administration is using, the bald-faced lies of this administration, their party, and their media, is painting Israel as the aggressor, as the genocidal oppressor. And this is intentional. Biden and Blinken are leading a diabolical, evil campaign against the government of Israel. They are trying to force a coup. They're trying to flip 5 members of the Likud party to take out Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They are obsessed. They are focused on this because their great paradisiacal plan in the Middle East is to strengthen Iran. Iran with nuclear weapons. Israel's the provocateur because Israel's militarily too powerful. If it would only give up 30% of its country, its ancestral land, Judea and Samaria, to the peaceful Palestinians who vote for Hamas. If they would only listen to Biden and Blinken. And so they're holding up weapons so Israel, they believe, can't defeat Hamas. They've told Israel not to attack Hezbollah. They told Israel when it was responding to the missiles, 300 or so fired in Israel, my family and I were there, do not respond in any significant way. We will not support you. And now there are reports, AP, Reuters, all over the place, that the day is coming, it could be tomorrow, where the United States is going to make a determination on whether or not Israel committed war crimes. Working hand in hand with the International Criminal Court, filled with radical left-wing Europeans, anti-Semites, anti-Americans, I might add. They don't have any jurisdiction over Israel, any jurisdiction over the United States. And Biden is supporting it. That's why they're timing this report the way that they are. Just think about how sinister this bastard is. And his media. And his party. Let's go to Cut 2. Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia. Cut 2, go.
What is the status of withholding our weaponry that we voted to send to Israel? Are we doing that? Or why are we doing that?
Again, our commitment to Israel is ironclad.
How is the commitment ironclad when you're withholding weapons? Why do they lie like this? Because they have a media that lie for them. A media that hate America, that hate conservatives, MAGA, Republicans, unless, of course, they're Benedict Arnolds, then they love them and promote them. And a media that hate Israel, that is filled with anti-Semites and self-hating Jews. Go ahead.
And, as I said earlier, since October 7th, we have flowed in billions of dollars worth of security assistance.
She's not asking you about that. So this is where they start, slipping and sliding. Go ahead.
And as you just mentioned, you just passed the largest supplemental in history that's focused on Israel. And we're going to continue
Actually, it's focused on Ukraine. There's far more money going to Ukraine, but that's okay. Go ahead.
To support Israel.
And I might add that this Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and this president have flowed more money into Iran than Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel combined. You got that? They take no responsibility for the war that they unleashed in the Middle East, for the deaths of those Israelis. Go ahead.
Are those reports false, then, that I'm reading?
No, we are currently reviewing some near-term security assistance shipments in the context of the unfolding events in Rafah.
So we are withholding our shipments of weapons predicated on the strategy that Israel's employing and going into Rafah. Is that the bottom line here?
We've not, again, we're assessing. We have not made any final decisions.
All right, shut up, you a-hole.
Mark Levin. we're giving you nothing but the best of Mark Levin.
Well, let's start from the beginning. We played this yesterday, but we're going to play it again because I have a lot more to say about this. Joe Biden confessing on CNN that he made a unilateral decision to cut off arms from the Jewish state of Israel. Go.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of in the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong.
All right, that's enough. How many times have I said this man fancies himself a dictator? And it goes on and on and on. I've got another clip here where he says he's working with the Arab states to create a Palestinian state, and he wants to create it out of the state of Israel. Even though Israel objects, he's going to go forward with this. He's going to get it recognized. He's going to push for it. He's going to threaten them even more. This part of what Biden said on CNN, nobody's even talking about. Listen to this. Cut 7, go.
And we got to think through what is happening after Gaza, after this is over. Who's going to occupy Gaza? I've been working with the Arab states. I won't mention them because I don't want to get them in trouble. But 5 leaders in the Arab community who are prepared to help rebuild Gaza, prepared to help transition to a 2-state solution.
To govern it?
Well, to maintain the security and peace while they're working out a Palestinian authority that's real and not corrupt.
Where does this man get the authority to do any of this? So nobody's played that clip. The rest of what he said. I want to address this. I said, what is it? What is today? Thursday? Maybe I said it on Monday or Tuesday, Mr. Producer. That this withholding of funds is a violation of federal law, the Impoundment Act, correct? Remember that? Well, I'm glad that everybody else is talking about it now. It's very important. And that's why we try to push this into the public discussion. I also said, I believe it was last night, that this is an impeachable offense. They tried it against Nixon and Trump and so forth. And so early this morning, as I prepare for this program and my Saturday opening statement, and trust me, you're not going to want to miss that. And we have Eric Trump. We have the president of a real college, Hillsdale College, Larry Arnn, that'll be on Saturday. Killer show. But I need to discuss this now, even though I discussed it at great length on Saturday. It's so weird how people want credit for things, how they jump the line. It's just so weird. But this is too important for people to do their usual hit and run, their usual posting and circulate. This is just too damn important. So I found this January 16, 2020, GAO, U.S. Government Accountability Office report. And it was used to try to destroy Donald Trump as a basis, an intent to try and impeach Donald Trump on the Ukraine issue. And what was the substance of this? I kind of remembered it, so I went and looked for it, and I found it. A law. The Impoundment Control Act, ICA, that was passed in 1974 to deal with Richard Nixon. It's been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. And so I want to read some of this to you so you'll be better informed and have more knowledge than anybody else who pretends to comment on it. In the summer of 2019, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, withheld from obligation funds appropriated to the Department of Defense for security assistance to Ukraine. In order to withhold the funds, OMB issued a series of 9 apportionment schedules with footnotes that made all unobligated balances unavailable for obligation. This is under President Trump. Faithful execution of the law does not permit the president, writes the GAO, to substitute his own policy priorities for those that Congress has enacted into law. OMB withheld funds for policy reasons, which is not permitted under the Impoundment Control Act. That is federal law. The withholding was not a programmatic delay. Therefore, we conclude that OMB violated the Impoundment Control Act, a.k.a. violated federal law. Now you know where I'm going and why I found this relevant. Now you know why I raised this several days ago and why I continue to dig into it. They say later in the report, an Appropriations Act is a law, like any other law. Therefore, unless Congress has enacted a law providing otherwise, the president must take care to ensure that appropriations are prudently obligated during their period of availability. Period. There's no choice. The Constitution grants the president no unilateral authority to withhold funds from obligation. The state Congress has vested the president with strictly circumscribed authority to impound or withhold budget authority only in very limited and rare circumstances as expressly provided by the law, and those do not apply here. There's no constitutional issue and so forth. The ICA, that is the law, separates impoundments into 2 exclusive categories, deferrals and rescissions. Now, the president may temporarily withhold funds from obligation, but not beyond the end of the fiscal year, which the president transmits the special message by proposing a deferral. The president may also seek the permanent cancellation of funds for fiscal policy or other reasons by proposing a recession. In either case, the law requires that the president transmit a special message to Congress that includes the amount of budget authority proposed for deferral or rescission and the reason for the proposal. And these messages must provide detailed and specific reasoning to justify the withholding as set out in the Act. There is no assertion that can be made unilaterally. In other words, Congress has to go along with this. But Congress not only was not notified, Congress is not prepared to go along with this. It goes on. The ICA does not permit deferrals for policy reasons. So under no circumstance under the law is there a deferral for a policy reason. I don't want them going into Rafah. Too bad. Too damn bad. OMB's justification. We're talking about Ukraine. Withholding falls squarely within the scope of an impermissible policy deferral. Thus, the deferral of USAI funds was improper under the ICA. When Congress enacts appropriations, it has provided budget authority that agencies must obligate in a manner consistent with the law. The Constitution vests lawmaking power with Congress under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. Faithful execution of the law does not permit the president to substitute his own policy priorities for those that Congress has enacted into law. In fact, Congress was concerned about exactly these types of withholdings when it enacted and later amended the ICA. And they concluded. By the way, the take care clause, I'm doing this off the top of my head, is Article 3, Section 3, I think Clause 1. The president has to take care that the laws will be executed. If he has a policy difference, this has been litigated multiple times before the U.S. Supreme Court. That's the rule. Separation of powers. A budget act is passed. The president signs it. He must comply with it. The agencies must comply with it. He can't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm under political pressure. You know what, I don't like what the Israelis are doing, so I've decided to withhold arms that have been appropriated for by Congress, that have been signed off for by the executive branch previously. He has no such power. Period. Period. No. Exclamation mark. OMB violated, they write, the ICA when it withheld DOD's USA-1 funds from obligation for policy reasons. The impoundment of budget authority was not a programmatic delay. OMB and the State Department, have failed to provide the information that we need to fulfill our duties, meaning the GAO. We consider a reluctance to provide a fulsome response to have constitutional significance. GAO's role under the ICA, under the law, to provide information and legal analysis to Congress as it performs oversight of executive activity is essential, and it goes on. This was waved around by Chris Van Hollen, who today praised Joe Biden and said he didn't go far enough. This was waved around by Bernie Sanders, who says all aid should be cut off to Israel because he's a Stalinist, self-hating Jew. This was waved around today by all the Israel and Jew haters in Congress, in the Democrat Party. This was waved around when they wanted to impeach Trump. And today they say nothing about it, except they praise. They praise Biden. So what do? Senator Risch, isn't that his name, Mr. Producer, from Idaho? Something like that. Very weak. We've invited him on the show a few years back, didn't want to come on because he's very weak, very cowardly. Says today there's nothing we can do about this. So when it comes to Senator Risch, the Constitution is not worth fighting for. He'll get up and whine and complain. He'll issue press releases. He'll condemn. But when it comes to the heavy lifting, upholding the Constitution that he swore an oath to uphold, he'll do nothing. Nothing. Congressman Michael McCaul, chairman of the House, I guess it's the Foreign Affairs Committee. There's nobody weaker and more pathetic. This is the law. This is what it says. He should be scratching at the Speaker's door. And he should be saying, my committee, I, as chairman of this committee, we are appalled by Joe Biden and what he's doing to the state of Israel. That he's violating the Impoundment Act. And that no president has this power. And remember, our Democrat colleagues were waving around this opinion, the one I'm holding in my hands, ladies and gentlemen, right now, waving it around to get Trump, to impeach Trump. They did impeach Trump. He sits on his fat ass and he does nothing. We've invited him on this program, and he's always conflicted. We have this, we have that. I don't blame him. He doesn't want to be exposed. Tom Cotton's out there pounding away. Ted Cruz is out there pounding away. Lindsey Graham's out there pounding away. So are several other senators. Not Senator Risch. Not Congressman McCaul. They're hiding. If they're not going to stand up now, they're utterly worthless. What is the point of these two individuals even serving in high positions in Congress? The fact is we have precedent, we have federal law, we have separation of powers, we have at least 3 provisions of the United States Constitution that are being violated. What can we do about it? Impeach. Well, Mark will never get the votes. I don't care. I don't care. This is the Constitution. That's not some rule coming out of the Rules Committee. This is the Constitution.